good morning here on Morning Brew. Happy Thursday morning, my fellow friends. I can see already Simon McInnes and Madhan is calling in from India. So I've got India, Newfoundland, Canada calling in today. Welcome, everybody. Exciting morning. Today we're going to be talking about the quiet professional and what we refer to in the military as GREYMAN syndrome. And my guest, Carson Honeycutt, was supposed to join me this morning. We are experiencing some technical difficulties, and so we may have to sort of go this solo, if the case may be. But we'll see that in a minute. I'll talk to you more about those wonderful challenges in a minute. Right now, let's roll the intro. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Brew. As you can see on the side of the screen, there is a blank square where Carson would be joining us. Now, if Carson does join us, that will all of a sudden pop up with his image. So I will be watching for that on the side screen. But so that you're not constantly looking at that steaming cup of coffee and a blank screen, I'm going to maybe switch to this for now, and we can have this discussion. Carson, if you're watching, feel free to connect with the link I've sent you, and I'll see you pop up on the screen. So good morning, everybody. Today I wanted to talk about, again, this quiet professional. From my experience in the military, we refer to this as GREYMAN syndrome. And is being a quiet professional hurting or helping your career? So when we talk about this idea of the quiet professional, what does that mean? In the context of the military, which is, again, is my experience. I'm a former naval warfare officer in the Royal Canadian Navy. And the idea of a quiet professional is one who does their job, does very little, if anything, to draw attention to themselves, but rather lets their work speak for themselves. They keep their head down, they don't make a fuss, and they focus on the task at hand. And in many professions around the world, this is sort of the model that has been promoted, supported, and encouraged throughout industry. And you know, in preparation for this episode and really trying to understand where that idea came from or comes from, the notion of the quiet professional, really we go back to the Industrial Revolution. And the Industrial Revolution is sort of an interesting time because before the Industrial Revolution, of course, none of us really, it's difficult for a lot of us to think back then, but in the past, before the Industrial Revolution, it was the artisan that was the creator of the things that you consumed, whether it was a blacksmith or a cobbler making shoes or whatever the case may be. I can see that Carson has joined us, so Carson's getting himself sorted out there. I'll just finish this thought and then I'll kick to us. But prior to the Industrial Revolution, the idea of the artisan was the sort of the person you went to get your things. And the craftsman who created that bespoke piece of, whether it was a blacksmith creating a sword or a suit of armor, or the cobbler that makes your shoes, or the tailor that made your exquisite gown or tunic. You know, there was a prestige going to that particular artisan or craftsman. And you see that today with regards to brands like Gucci or Nike or whatever the case may be. But when we went into the Industrial Revolution, the relationship between the sort of the employer and the employee changed. Instead of being a a talent that was recognized and given accolades around their specific product or the results of their work, you were one of many. You were a number. You were a person on the assembly line, a cog in the wheel, so to speak. And your role was not to draw attention to the work that you were doing or yourself, but rather just keep your head down, be part of the machine, and do that work. And that permeated from the Industrial Revolution through our education and our culture throughout World War I and II, through the 50s. And it wasn't really until the 60s that we saw a real kind of pushback on a lot of the conformity that was existing in our culture at that time. So we fast forward to today, and we're in a very interesting environment where we have social media, which sort of by design is around drawing attention on social media, and how that conflicts or contrasts with the sort of the preconceived notion of this quiet professional, of the individual who is part of a team, part of the mechanism, part of the machinery that makes the products, the things that we have. So with that being said, Carson has joined us. Carson Honeycutt, welcome to the show. I know that before we were having some not insignificant technical challenges, so I will sort of preface everybody. Carson's connection has been a little bit challenging with us this morning. It is very difficult to get further above the Great White North here in Canada, but Carson has managed to do that today, coming in from the great state of Alaska. So that may have something to do, solar storms and what have you, with our internet connection today. But his audio may cut in and out. We'll see how it goes. But either way, Carson, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Tony. I'm here and happy to hopefully get some other people from the Great White North. People here, I'm like, oh, that's so far away. But I feel a certain bonding with Canadians because you all, it really isn't. So,
well, as you can hear, everybody, Carson's audio is super choppy, but that is the fun and the excitement of the technical challenges as we go live. But let's try and muddle through this with regards to this discussion around GREYMAN syndrome. So for those of you who don't know Carson is a military veteran as well. One of the reasons why I wanted to bring him on the show and have this discussion, because the GREYMAN syndrome really, being the quiet professional, really permeates throughout the military. Now, in the preamble before we went live, Carson and I were discussing this notion about the difference between sort of bragging and we've lost Carson. Oh no, Carson's back. So the notion between bragging and the holding on to a secret, and the sort of the contrast between I'm going to hold on to a secret and it's a bit of a power play versus I'm bragging, just trying to draw attention to myself, and sort of the contrast between the two. So let's try your audio, Carson. Why don't you tell us a little bit about sort of this idea of show, don't tell, and the value of showing versus telling, and how that contrast between bragging and sort of quantifying your results.
Yeah, a lot of quiet professors, maybe people who suffer from a little bit of this man syndrome that you're talking about, they believe in the fundamental concept of show, tell, which is why they want to demonstrate their value, right? Which makes sense. That is a lofty and noble goal, and I think that's important because there's a lot of people, especially in a very social media we live in now, to just do a bunch of right. I'm so good at this, good at that.
So Carson, I'm just going to jump in here because your audio is really broken, just really hard to understand what you're saying. So
kill my video about that and see if it helps. Is that any better?
So your video is out, but your audio is still cutting in and out,
Yeah.
which is always a challenge. But let me sort of summarize what you were saying, and you can kind of give us the thumbs up if that's kind of what you were trying to get at. So in this era of social media that we're living in today, there is a lot of talking about the things that you're doing, the bragging about the sort of the stuff that's going on in your life, perhaps. Look at me. I'm here, present. I'm standing next to this car. Isn't it great? Whatever the case may be. So the idea being that you're trying to associate yourself with something that is attractive or that is visually compelling, and by association, not necessarily result, you are drawing attention to yourself. I'm hanging out with this star next to this hot car. I'm at this specific event, whatever the case may be. Versus the professional piece, which is around the work and the consequences of your work, the impact that you have, the results that you deliver. Meaning that, for example, sort of, I'm a firefighter and I've put out, a 10-story blaze, or I'm let's say a stockbroker, and or a business professional, and I resulted in a 50% profit for my company over 12 months. Or I'm a manager of a manufacturing facility, and we increased our output by 25% over the course of 3 months. Or if you're a sports team, I won a Stanley Cup. If it's hockey, I won the Super Bowl. Tom Brady, how many Super Bowls has he won? That kind of idea. I'm sure I just lost a whole bunch of people mentioning Tom Brady and the Patriots. But regardless of your team, the results around your team. It's about winning that championship. It's about winning those games and driving those results. And actually, that makes me think of the sports athlete metaphor. An athlete is paid based on the results that they can provide their team. If you go back, you think about Michael Jordan for the Bulls. He was the star and the top player on that team, producing the results. Now, granted, Rodman and Pippen and the rest of the team were certainly supporting that, and they had a lot to contribute, but there was no doubt that the focus was around Jordan. The same thing could be said around Wayne Gretzky during his heyday. Any star athlete on any team, LeBron James comes to mind currently in basketball, and whoever that sort of focal point is, they're the person you turn to as your star player to drive those results. And certainly within a team game, that's why those star athletes receive those sort of the highest pay on those teams, is because they score those goals. They get those the points on the board that win the games and so on. Or I suppose if you're talking about hockey, the goalie is saving or preventing scores on net and things like that. But nonetheless, their performance, their tangible, quantifiable numbers performance is what drives their value. And that, I think, is the difference you were trying to get at between the sense of bragging, which is look at me, look at me, look at me, versus I'm just going to drop the facts in front of you, and that's what I've done.
Exactly. And you're quantifying role within that greater whole, and that's and that's not bragging. You did the work, and it had. It's not bragging. You do need to say something and not play that secret game and your team.
And so that's I'm sorry to cut you off there, Carson. Just the choppiness of your audio. You made a really good point around holding on to that information, right? So the piece around holding on to a secret. So, for example, if we go back to that model of the assembly line, and you're watching, I think of like I Love Lucy and those chocolates, and they're like trying to grab those chocolates off the assembly line. Um, and you're watching things go by, and you see something that's wrong. You see that something's wrong with the machine, or the chocolates aren't coming out right, or whatever it is on the assembly line, the thing that you're trying to make, it's not coming out the way they want it made. The standardization is off. So you could either say nothing, keep your head down, and if you do that, then you're not going to draw attention to yourself. You're not necessarily going to get in trouble. The negative attention certainly isn't going to come, but the negative impact of you not saying anything is going to be substantial in the sense that the product that's coming at the end of that assembly line is not going to be meeting the standard, and there's going to be a problem. Whereas if you draw attention to that fact, you bring that value to the team and say, hey, we need to stop for a second and fix something because something's wrong, then you just saved, however, let's say it went on for 5 minutes before somebody else stopped it. You just saved the company 5 minutes worth of assembly line production to be able to do that thing. Now, whether that's raising your hand to say, I think that we should do this new process, use this new product, or implement this new practice, and that thing, whatever it is, will save us 10%, $10, 10 minutes, whatever it is, but it will provide value to the organization. That raising your hand and drawing attention to yourself, but you're adding value, you're having impact, the 10%, the $10, the 10 minutes, versus the bragging piece, which would be just be like, look at me, I am the whatever position on this team, whatever position on this assembly line, the manager, the safety inspector, the whatever it is. You're not necessarily talking about the value you bring, the impact you have, but rather just the role that you, or the sort of the amount of heat and light that you're absorbing, so to speak. And that being such a big difference. It actually makes me think of, in a previous episode, we talked to the Amazon interview whiz, Gigi. She talked about the STAR model when it comes to responding to questions in interviews. Situation, what's my situation? What's going on? Task, what was the thing that I'm doing? What action, or what job am I being given? Action, what action am I taking? And what was the result of my action? So you're really kind of framing that model in a very similar way to be able to talk about tangible results and impact that you're having, and that being the big difference. So let's take a second, test your audio again, and have a sense of whether in today's social media, so we've established that the quiet professional is the individual who does not step forward, who does not draw attention to themselves for fear of negative attention, as in like, be quiet, sit down, we don't need your input right now. And for context, from a military background, both Carson and I have seen examples of individuals who do that and they receive punishment as a result, whether it's an administrative burden, that sort of the classic peeling potatoes that you might have seen in a movie, or whatever the case is. You have some kind of punitive duty that you're assigned as a way to encourage you not to step forward and draw attention to yourself again. Rather just be part of the collective, part of the team. So in this environment, we're talking about an individual who does not want to step forward, draw attention to themselves. Therefore, they fall into the background. They fade into the masses. They become the gray man. That's where that label comes from. And so they just do their work, and their work as part of the collective produces a result, and that's what speaks for itself. So that's a quiet professional. But that's contrasted to what we just described, which is the individual that brings value, that brings impact, that brings results. And that person is a person who steps forward not out of a need to have attention, not from a narcissistic perspective, but rather from the perspective of having good intent, wanting to add value, wanting to contribute. In a sense, going back to the military service piece, wanting to serve. And they want to really contribute positively to the environment. They don't do it out of vanity, again, out of narcissism or need to be sort of soothed by the masses or attention. They do it out of a need or a desire, rather, to have positive impact on what they're doing. Now, so that's when we talk about the quiet professional, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the individual who does not seek the spotlight, who does not seek attention, who avoids it because of perhaps a fear of the negative impact of that attention. And in the context of our background, being former military service individuals and having to go from the military culture of promoting that gray man mentality and stepping into an environment where we have to draw attention to ourselves, because essentially when you're looking to go into the job market, when you're looking to apply for positions, when you're looking to, even as an entrepreneur, market yourself, you need to draw attention to yourself, what you can do. And that is a very, very uncomfortable thing for a lot of military service people to do. And that baggage, that cultural carryover from being in uniform really has a negative impact on your ability to be able to market yourself, to be able to identify what you individually have accomplished, the impact that you individually have had, the results that your actions drive, and the value that you bring. So, I've talked a lot. Let's do another test of Carson's audio and see, Carson, when we talk about that piece around putting aside this preconceived notion of being the gray man and uncomfortably trying to draw attention to yourself, how do you quantifiably determine the difference between the bragging piece and the quantifying your value piece? Where's the line that delineates the two?
The line for me, if feedback, and mean by that, are you getting feedback from people saying really helped me? Right? What you shared with really helped me, and it helped me do this. And a lot of times it will be somebody coming back to you saying, I was banging my head against the wall with that problem, and then you shared what you were doing to solve the same that I had, and it totally worked, right? Then no longer bragging. It's value, because there's a human feedback loop that comes back to you and says that was useful.
The human feedback loop. That's a really, I think that's a really smart way to sort of short circuit and get past this idea of bragging, in the sense that when others talk about you in the positive way, when others talk about you, about how good you are, the impact you have, the results that you drive, when others say that about you, you're not saying it about yourself. You totally bypass the narcissism. Someone is saying that they cannot hear what I am saying. Brian's saying he can't hear what I'm saying. I'm just going to quickly check my audio. I'm showing some good audio coming through. If you can hear me, everybody, I'm just going to type in the comments. Let me know. Let me know if you can hear me as I tap my ears. Um, so the human feedback piece being a way to short circuit, get around this notion of narcissism and the idea that you're trying to brag about what you're doing because other people are doing it for you. We
Right.
call that, I guess, in marketing, that's the social proof aspect, right? That's the piece
Yes.
where you have customers talking about what it is you do. Or in a job search, it's references. You have your references speak about the work that you've done, the impact that you've had, how amazing you are as a talent, and so on. So I suppose how important is it for whether you're, for example, in our experience, a military member transitioning out of a culture that promotes and perpetuates a mentality around don't draw attention to yourself. So we have to put that aside and move into this space where we essentially have to, in order to be able to, stand out, present our unique value proposition when it comes to finding a role or a job or business if it's an entrepreneurial venture. And then once you're in a role, in a job, or you're running a business, how do we thread that needle with regards to, if I don't have the social proof yet, if I don't have a mechanism or a way to be able to have others speak for me, how can I engage a conversation, start a message, make a social media post that talks about me, myself, and I in a way that's not narcissistic, that comes across as genuine and authentic, and that has value for the audience you're trying to reach, as opposed to just saying, look at me.
Yeah. If you don't have social proof yet, there's this concept known as bar credibility. And what you're looking is saying, here's the problem that I'm with in my day. Here's the impact having on me. Here's the that I found to help solve that. And here's the amount of what they say to do. And here's here's the result that I'm having now.
So Carson,
That's useful.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're just broken. You said something credibility. There was a something bar credibility. What was that word again?
Borrowed ability.
I still can't make it out.
So
one more time.
borrowed.
Borrowed.
Borrowing.
Borrowed
Yeah.
credibility. Thank you.
Yeah.
Borrowed credibility. And I apologize to everybody. The connection, whether it's like, and I joked earlier about solar storms and so on, but these are the challenges and the fun facts of doing live shows. Is sometimes the tech issues come up and you just kind of got to go with it. And I want to shout out to Carson for his tenacity to be able to work through this. We saw this at the very beginning of the show. We tried to reconnect with a different way to reconnect it. We rebooted systems. We went through and tried to troubleshoot all the technical problems, and he is still here, and he is still trying to add value to you. So as a way to be able to draw attention and speak to the accolades of Carson Honeycutt, I want to tell you about how this individual, this man, is focused about delivering value to you. And he is here persevering through trying to make sure that you can hear this message around borrowed credibility and how you can speak about, for example, authors or other individuals who have these fantastic ideas. And you essentially, it's like Newton said, I stand on the shoulders of giants. And that's where he came up with his theory of gravity and his phenomenal contributions to science. And that is the same for all of us. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. We all, you've heard the saying, there's nothing new in history. We're all borrowing from the accomplishments of the past to some degree. So in this context, it's not about talking about the great things that you've done, the great ideas that you have, but rather you can illustrate the references that you are drawing from, the great ideas, the smart people, if you will, who have come up with these concepts, these notions, these ideas of value, and how you're applying them, or how you see the impact of those ideas being applicable to what it is that you do. So again, just to recap for today, we talked about the gray man. We talked about this quiet professionalism and the difference, quiet professionalism being an individual who does not step forward to draw attention to themselves for whatever the reason may be, fear of negative attention, an aversion to the attention of others, whatever the case may be. But nonetheless, they do not step forward and draw attention to themselves, but rather they sit back and they just keep their head down and work with the hope, with the intention that the results of their work will speak for themselves. The narcissistic bragging of what happens today is what we want to avoid. That notion of, look at me, trying to grab attention, and so on and so forth. And that is the negative association of trying to draw attention to yourself. What we want to do, and what we're talking about in this show, in this episode, is the middling of the difference between the two, which is not necessarily being quiet and saying nothing, because that doesn't serve you. That doesn't allow you to share the value that you have with other people. In fact, one might argue, if you're going to an extreme, that it is a selfish thing, because you are holding on to the secrets, the value, the great ideas that you have. You are not sharing them with the world. Imagine if Newton never told us about the theory of gravity, if Einstein never shared special relativity. If these ideas had not been shared, then great accomplishments would not have been made. It is your duty to be able to share those great ideas. However, we do not want to go into the realm of, look at me, narcissistic vanity kind of communication that is all about what I'm doing and why you should sort of adore me, love me, pay attention to me. Rather, we want to middle the difference and talk about what we're doing and the impact that it has, the value that you bring, bringing this service mentality to the conversation, and as a way to be able to bypass and really avoid that sort of bragging, narcissistic conversation, borrowing the social proof or borrowing the credibility of others, speaking about other ideas that contribute or illustrate your point, having others speak about you, praise and give you accolades and speak to the results that you've driven. And then finally, if you are the only one standing forth and speaking and communicating these ideas, it's all about quantifying those results, quantifying those impacts. If you drop the facts on the table as far as the numbers, the percentage, the time that you've saved, all those quantifiable metrics, those are the facts of the matter that provide the proof around the value and the impact that you have, as opposed to you just saying, standing next to a fancy car saying, look at me, I'm rich, or, throwing up your hands next to a famous celebrity and saying, look who I know, or whatever the case may be. It's not about the attention, it's about the value that you bring. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here today on Morning Brew. I want to thank Carson, and I apologize so much to Carson for the technical issues and the challenges that we've had today. Carson, in one last attempt, is there any last thing that you want to say or share with the audience here on Morning Brew?
Yeah, don't give in to imposter syndrome, because also drive a lot of this gray mentality is thinking, oh well, already been said, or why if I say it, I'm just going to be like everybody.
Imposter syndrome. That is probably a topic for another show, and something that we'll have to bring Carson back for, so that we can sort out this technical issue and we can actually hear what Carson's saying. So imposter syndrome being the thing that could hold you back, your fear of not bringing enough sort of credibility to the conversation. Don't let imposter syndrome hold you back. You know, be brave, have courage, step forward and share those ideas because they have value, you have value, and we appreciate you here on Morning Brew. Thank you, Carson, for joining us. Thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I'll roll the outro.